All right. Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to Sudozi Finance Friday. Every week we get to speak with an amazing finance professional. And this week I'm excited to have Jason Migdal. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you, Rose. Thank you so much for having me, and welcome everyone. Hope your week is going well after Thanksgiving and getting ready for the
Yeah.
holidays.
Yeah, first Friday of December. Got those advent calendars rocking and rolling. Jason, you have such an amazing background in different sizes of company, different responsibilities. Would love to just spend a minute or two in the beginning. You mentioned before the call you didn't actually major in finance, so tell us a little bit about that time and how you got into your first finance role.
Yes, absolutely. So I never thought, at least in college, that I was going to end up in finance. Somehow did. I majored actually in marketing and entrepreneurship, double major, and I went to a great school, University of Arizona, but it's not Harvard or Ivy League or a top UC or something. And from there, I chose Arizona in particular because of this entrepreneurship program and just general business.
The
And
Wildcats, right?
Wildcats, yep, exactly.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening is the entrepreneurship program a little bit was like startup finance major, but didn't really
Yeah.
realize it until I'm in the midst of it. Because
Right.
in a startup, there's a lot to do, but
Yeah.
certainly understanding your multiples, understanding different aspects of that startup business models is really what they're teaching you. And from there, I actually had an opportunity to go work at Walmart in Arkansas. So I'd interned with them for 2 summers. They asked me to come back. And what's interesting
Nice.
is they have this really long program, and I call it a mini company MBA, where they really
Uh-huh.
teach you a little bit about everything. And then from there, you kind of graduate the program and you can become a planner analyst. And they just implemented this. And so your first job, instead of being a merchant or a buyer, you kind of become a planner
Yeah.
analyst. My department that I joined, household chemicals, was it's like um, Clorox wipes or things like that.
Yep. Yep. Yeah.
Was down a member on the team, and so I got to be both a kind of a buyer and a planner
Oh,
analyst.
interesting. So you got
And
the
so
operation and finance side
exactly, it's
combined out
really
of school.
interesting. Yeah, exactly. And so you're doing a lot of supply and demand forecasting. That's really your first intro in, or my first intro into that experience, and kind of set me on that path of financial planning. And so that was really interesting. And from there, you can go either kind of the merchant route or continue finance or some other route. And I
Yep.
decided to move back home from the Bay Area and went to Apple. And that's kind of really started my, I guess, career in finance, where I joined their finance team. And it was basically store planning, construction, and it was like project management finance. So that kind of kicked it off, and eventually made my way into FP&A, and from there, just kind of that was the path I was on. Eventually, I'd find that my passion is more into operations, but
Yep.
that's
Yep.
that beginning finance structure really laid the foundation for everything else.
Awesome. Yeah, it's super interesting in terms of like that must have been a really fascinating time. I mean, any time it's really fascinating at Apple, but particularly as the stores were really becoming a big thing, right? And thinking through project management, the global nature of that, super interesting. Like it's technically in tech, but it's actually just got a huge physical element in that role.
It
So
was
we
it
were,
was really
yeah.
interesting.
What was any favorite Apple memories from that time?
The thing that there's a lot of interesting times at Apple there. Um, and in the retail division in particular, it was a lot was happening. I got to help open the first store in Brazil, which was exciting for a South
Yeah.
American store. And well, the thing I remember, for some reason it sticks with me so much, is all the stone for the floors comes from one quarry in Italy. Like they're that very particular, and like every
Yeah.
single table is like handcrafted exactly how they need it, with like hidden drop
Like drawers and all the
drawers, and
gadgets.
yeah, all these different
Yeah.
things. And it's just the attention to detail in every single store, to me, was so shocking. Now, on
Yeah.
a per store basis, I think they're like number one or number two on on sales per square foot or something like that. So it makes sense. but it's just absolutely baffling to me, the amount of detail and tension, and then just so much you don't even think about, because a part of the job also is renovation as well as maintenance, right? And all these different aspects. It's really where you're getting exposed to both. You got the CapEx and OpEx aspect, and they're finally coming together into one cohesive P&L.
That's amazing. And so you went from that role with very much of a physical presence to Twitter, very much of a digital presence. Talk about that transition in your career, and also responsibilities, and sort of any sort of technical shifts in your priorities you needed to make.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, Rose, similar to you, I was sick of commuting.
Yes.
3 hours a day was quite a lot, and it was,
if not more, depending on when you
if not
travel.
more. And it's just so draining. I mean, it's a lot of people think like, hey, you have an hour and a half each way, like watch a movie or something. But that commute, for some reason, just drains you. And I'm an early morning person, so I was getting up, I think at 5 something, because I wanted to catch the 5:50 train, 5:50 bus to get to the Apple gym, which Apple's very smart. They make it's a nice gym, but they make you pay for it. I was just reminded of that last night, actually. So that commute was just, it was killer. And I had a friend who's at Twitter, said, hey, come check this out. I think I wore like a really baggy suit to the interview because they made fun of, they made like jokes about it for years to come. But I got the job, and I started as a financial analyst, moved my way up through 5.5 years to be a manager there. And when I first joined, it's very interesting, totally different mindset. Like that was my first real FP&A. So it was really more project management at Apple, real FP&A at Twitter. There's only like 4 of us, and I was managing pretty much all of G&A, and every single thing in those early years, right? Every new job, the entire first month, like all you're doing is absorbing and learning and trying to figure out how things work, right?
Yeah. Before you build a model, you have to know what to even build.
Exactly. And like in a way where the bodies are buried, but like just really in a way how to work the internal systems, right? Like Apple has so many unique, just for them, custom systems. Twitter was on that path. They were much earlier, but they have their own systems. And as we go through our career, I found that later on in the career, it gets faster, right? You can onboard and ramp so much faster because you've seen so much, right? But even then, I mean, I remember Apple, I was just so flabbergasted, like for the first month, like, what do I do? Like, help. And then same thing with Twitter. The first month, you're like, you have these expectations of you of yourself, really. I mean, maybe others as well, but really yourself. Like you're a high performer. You're used to just sitting down and going.
Yeah. And
you just can't do that. And so it was a really big transition. I was really fortunate that the talent there when I joined was really high, and appreciate everyone I worked with, figured it out. And it was also a totally different mindset. Walmart was like, they would go, the CEO would go and count how many unopened envelope, or how many paper clips he found in the trash bin, literally. And he would count them all and then make a big demonstration about cost savings. Apple wasn't quite like that, but it had a similar like mantra
vibe.
Vibe. Twitter, you've got free food, you've got nobody had seen that downturn really at Twitter. It was just nothing but growth and spending. And so joining them was a complete mind shift change for me. And a little bit of me was initially like, hey, I had to get used to like, hey, these are the good times. And then I had to like later on at my time at Twitter be like, all right, now we need to change the mindset of business partners to start thinking it's not all rosy and not everything's glorified. Let's think about, hey, how do we grow sustainably? And it just takes time to think about these different tech cultures that you're joining. And there's pros and cons to each, but certainly if you join a company that is undisciplined and maybe even undisciplined with their financial spending, it takes time to change that mentality.
Totally. And I'd love to, Drew, we can spend 20 minutes on any one of your career moves, but in that transition, I would say, of, spend to maybe department level budgets, or deploying those? I know a lot of our viewers have like been doing that for the first time or two at their companies because of how, the macro environments have been the last year or two. Any stories on like rolling out a department level budget, or like, did that actually help some of the efficiencies and culture around, efficiency on the company?
Absolutely. First thing is, you can't really be financially dependable or responsible until you have visibility. Now, I was lucky when I did join Twitter, they had just implemented Essbase. And so, but there weren't any templates or anything. So it was kind of on myself and a few other people to build those.
Do everything.
To do everything, right. And so I'm really passionate about that. So built a lot of templates that we could start to raise the visibility of what was going on, right? And where the spend was happening. And you started to see a lot of bad actors, frankly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the question is, do you go after the bad actors, or do you go after the biggest, maybe the lowest hanging fruit that are the biggest opportunities? You kind of have this actually torn thing, right? Bad actors versus, right? And you only have so much time in the day. And so, it's a luxury to get the decision, I guess, or that have that problem, because it means at least you have visibility and you have leaders that are engaged. So step one is getting visibility, then engaging the leaders and basically showing them, hey, your decisions now can free up budget or whatever it is for later on. Right. It's all about, and small companies, I learned later on, right, as was at Helix and Upway, at Helix, Upway, and HipCamp, right?
Yeah.
You're extending runway. At bigger companies, or medium companies like Twitter was at the time, it's really all about bringing just an understanding that you can get more bang for your buck, right? You can improve your metrics, and eventually, right, you're talking actually about what key metrics are driving that business. So in marketing, right, what are their KPIs and what's their conversion rates? And I help them build their first, of course, with the help of engineering and product, help build their first LTV and CAC analysis. So lifetime value and CAC.
Yeah.
And hopefully I'm coming out with an article about it on LinkedIn in the coming weeks. But the whole concept is that that might not exist in any of the companies that like are listening to this right now. And it's our responsibility as finance or operations professionals to bring that visibility, so you understand the margins you're working with and understand where you can focus. And frankly, it should highlight some really important next steps for you.
Totally. Especially even just the actuals, right? Without any forecasting, just get visibility to actuals and historicals. That'll sort of drive the most strategic places you can place bets in the company moving forward.
Exactly.
All right. Just for timing, we've got to move forward, unfortunately. But let's spend a few minutes in the last, 3 or 4 minutes here chatting about that transition back to super early stage and now at Salesforce. From a career perspective, what drove you to do those make those moves? And then any, if you could chat through some tips from the finance perspective in that transition.
Sure. So leaving Twitter, I wanted to try a startup. I mean, in the Bay Area, it's all around you. It's in the news. It's everywhere. And I worked at some pretty big companies, Walmart and Apple, two of the biggest. Twitter was maybe medium. And I just wanted to try that startup feel. I was really fortunate. I joined Helix and had a lot of great mentors, but I didn't spend a lot of time there. I had to help them basically restructure their business model, and learned all about that's really where unit economics came into the biggest play for the first time for me, really understanding that. And so then HipCamp was even smaller. I ran all of finance and operations for them. That was my first real, I would say, hey, you're on your own, reporting to the CEO, figure it out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things you have to learn for the first time, right? 409As, right? Dealing with taxes, dealing with insurance, R&D tax credit.
Yeah.
You name it. There's a million things and I was also over all of G&A. So one moment I might be changing a light bulb, the next we're talking to investors. I'm like, not even kidding here. You wear so many different hats, and in those roles, it's so much about prioritizing. And then, and I love that. But at the same time, bigger companies have different aspects in different areas you can learn from. And I would say that switching between big and small is absolutely doable for anyone. I think what's really important is understanding what you're getting into and how your mind shift has to change. When you're in a small company, you are
Right.
doing a million things every day,
Yep.
and you're not as focused on one in particular. When you're at a bigger company, you really have you are the expert in that one part. And how do you network through the bureaucracy to basically get that done? Whereas in a small company, it's less about the bureaucracy. It's more like how do you find the resources to get what you need done, or the time in your own calendar.
Yeah, it's just the allocation of time shifts from different activities in those companies, and among a million other things. Do you change light bulbs at Salesforce anymore?
I do not change light bulbs at Salesforce. They have people that do that for us. But
amazing.
yeah, I would just say that there's so much. I think there's a lot of when I've interviewed in the past, people think you're a big company person or a small company, and you can't be both.
Right.
I just think that some people, maybe that is the case, but I just think that that's very short-sighted, right? You can do actually, and the breadth of experience lends it, builds upon itself. So every little experience you're getting can allow you to be, take best practices and implement them in different ways.
Yeah. We got a LinkedIn comment here. Great to see Jason wear so many hats in his incredible career. I completely second that. It's amazing. We could do, again, multiple hours of conversations in each of these roles here. Unfortunately, we're nearing the end. I guess as we wrap up here, thoughts on macro environment, companies going into next year. Let's use like large company, right? Because you could prioritize for different companies. Like large company going into next year, what are the top things to keep an eye on? And then we'll wrap it up from there.
Yeah. Interesting question. I think everyone's talking about this. I'm an optimist as a human being, but I actually realistically think that we are quarters away from coming out of anything. I'm not sure we've seen the worst of it, but I think it's interesting. Jobs data that just came out, right?
Yeah.
Very positive, which means we're going to continue to see potential inflation risk, which means higher interest rates. It kind of continues to cascade. So I think that we have quarters before we really even begin to see what we're getting out of, or maybe even see the worst of it, right? I don't think that we've seen a lot of layoffs, but I think that it could get worse in the short term. And I think extending runway as long as possible is really important. And so a couple of tips here to do that, right? Talk to every single vendor, renegotiate with every single vendor, go and cut anything that you can that you don't need, right? Reevaluate all of those aspects. The one thing I would say is what you often find in layoffs is you lay off people just to hire them back 2 quarters later. So take a pause, take a moment. And yes, if you lay off earlier, you have more time to make those decisions because you have, you're cutting the salaries earlier. You've got, you extend your runway immediately versus waiting 6 months to see how things happen and then it's too late. Totally understand that. But at the same time, depending on the size of the company, you really need to think through, am I just going to turn around and hire these people? And is this something temporary? Can we see this through? Are there other levers or activities that we can do to raise revenue or maybe other areas that chip off and maybe side projects. So basically that was my advice, is to, in these turbulent times, to think longer term and not just near term, right? Part of my job at Salesforce, long-term planning, right? Think long-term, think of the next 5 years, think of the next 2 years. If you're just nearsighted, you're going to end up frankly seesawing, and that isn't good for anyone in the company and ends up with a lot of whiplash.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And thinking about like that, I would say secondary impact, right, of whether it's layoffs or cutting vendor relationships or whatever it is, the action you're taking is like understanding the double click of that and what that means for the next few years. All right, this has been amazing. Ending on a light note here. One fun fact to share, or favorite new product, something lighthearted to end this session.
I've got a couple for you. I came prepared, Rez. Favorite restaurant in downtown San Francisco is Sababa. Favorite app for money is Mint, though I should really use it more. Favorite Web3 app is Eco Wallet. And favorite
nice.
Salesforce product is Marketing Cloud and Tableau.
Marketing Cloud and Tableau. All right, you got two there.
Yeah, all right. So favorites.
A lot of favorite children to pick from. I know.
Yes.
So awesome. Well, this has been incredible, Jason. Thank you so much for your time. I'm sure a lot of people will find value in different parts of this conversation. And best of luck with long range planning for the next locking things in the next few months.
Thank you so much, Rose, and appreciate you having me. And this was fun.
Yeah. All right. Bye, Jason.